Hello everyone and welcome! This is Asia, and here's Yemen. Now let's go, shall we? Perched at the base of the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen has always been situated in a crucial spot for trade. The first major state to arise in Yemen was the Kingdom of Seb, or Sheba, founded by the people group known as the Sabaeans. The Kingdom of Sheba had a written script and some impressive architectural and engineering skills. They also colonized parts of Ethiopia and Eritrea, and raked in wealth from a lucrative spice trade. Of course, the Western world is most familiar with this kingdom because of the Queen of Sheba, the monarch mentioned in the Bible who set out to visit Solomon, the king of Israel. Anyway, Sheba lasted for many centuries and, after some ebbs and flows of power, ended up eclipsed by a rival kingdom. By the 4th century, the Himyarite rulers had abandoned Arab paganism and converted to Judaism. One of these Jewish kings, in the 6th century, became so infamous for his slaughtering of Christians that the Ethiopian Christian kingdom of Aksum invaded in response and put an end to him. The region of Yemen subsequently fell to the Persian Sasanian Empire. The 7th century saw the birth in Arabia of the Islamic religion, which quickly spread south to Yemen and which remains the majority faith there to this day. Anyway, the tribes of Yemen contributed greatly to the far-reaching conquests of the caliphates. And as the years passed and the states of the caliphs splintered and fragmented, Yemen came to be ruled by an Ismaili Shia dynasty. What does that mean? Well, not to get too complicated, Shia Muslims believe in a different line of authority and succession after Muhammad than Sunni Muslims. The Ismaili Shia Muslims believe in a different line of authority to the majority of Shia Muslims. Anyway, the Sunni Ayyubid dynasty of Egypt conquered Yemen, but that was followed by another dynasty, which pushed for and attained great commercial success before, you guessed it, another dynasty came along, whose trade was rudely interrupted by the arrival of the Portuguese, whose presence in the Indian Ocean was solidified after thrashing the Egyptians in this naval battle here. After years of conflict, the Ottoman Turks were unable to dislodge the Portuguese from the wider region, but they did succeed in gaining a foothold in Yemen, especially on the coast. The port of Al-Makha was instrumental in transporting Ethiopian coffee, and so Mocha coffee is named after it. And now, the next time no one asks you about this, you can tell them, and they'll be like, wow. Thanks. Anyhow, the Yemeni tribes were never very willing and loyal Ottoman subjects, and actual Turkish administration was minimal. By 1638, the Yemenis had expelled the Turks, and they went on to banish all the Jews of Yemen to a barren, desolate place where many died. The Imamate of Yemen subsequently declined because of infighting and financial quandaries. Coffee was a big part of Yemen's economy, but Europeans had taken coffee plants and were growing them in their own colonies, and thus didn't have to rely on Yemen anymore for their caffeine addictions. So the state split apart, and then the British took control of a chunk of the region to protect its interests in India. This worried the Turks, who returned and took possession of a part of the highlands in the north, but faced strong resistance from regional tribal chiefs. One of their biggest headaches came with Imam Yahya, a leader of another branch of Shia Islam called Zaydism, whose successful revolt drove the Turks out of much of the land they occupied before they finally retreated in 1918. He next went after the British, but was unsuccessful, and the British remained in the south, and British Aden was by this time one of the busiest ports in the world. But irritation at Britain's continual presence was very much expressed. Northern Yemen exploded into a civil war for 8 years after a coup, which toppled the monarchy and proclaimed a republic. And despite Egyptian help, the royalists lost, and thus over 1,000 years of Zaydi Imam rule there ended. Meanwhile, rebellion consumed the south, and, in 1967, the British said toodaloo and withdrew. So now there were two Yemens, and they both distrusted the other, and it looked like yes, another war. Of course, what did you think was going to happen? Nothing was solved, and so another method was tried. War! That's right, the northern president with his interesting choice in facial hair was murdered, and the bad relations worsened into conflict, and the South won. Then the South had some trouble and began seeing the benefit of unification, and so, in 1990, the two Yemens joined to become one Yemen. And separatists in the South didn't like this, and so, hey look, time for another war. The Yemeni civil war ended with Unionists victorious and Yemen remaining intact. So things calmed down and everything was up. Nope, more trouble. The Zaydis had never forgotten being ousted from power, and after the Zaydi leader of the Houthi religious political movement was targeted for arrest by the government, fierce rebellion broke out. By 2014, it had swollen into a full-scale civil war, and the Houthis took control of the capital city. Saudi Arabia then led a military intervention against the Iran-backed Houthis. After Israel began its campaign in Gaza in 2023, the Houthis began sending missiles and drones towards Israel and attacking shipping in the Red Sea, leading to devastating retaliatory strikes by the US, the UK, and Israel. As of this present moment, things are not going well for Yemen. Nearly a decade of famine, rampant corruption and human rights abuses. It's ranked as the least peaceful country in the world, with the lowest Human Development Index ranking outside of Africa. Things are bad, and let's hope they don't stay that way long. So here's hoping for better times, but as for me, it's bye for now. Bye-bye!